He leaned back in that chair like he had already won. He told me my position was being eliminated. He said it cleanly, professionally. Then he added the second part. A woman named Brooke was starting tomorrow. I would spend my final weeks training her to do my job. I looked at him across that desk. I kept my face completely still. I said I understood, and I did understand, far better than he knew. Here's what this story is really about. It is about spending years building something real, caring about it more than the person running it ever did, then watching that person dismantle it piece by piece. If you have ever given everything to a place and watched someone treat it like nothing, you already know this feeling. Subscribe. This story has one of the most satisfying endings I have ever told. I do not want you to miss a single part of it. My name is Renee Clark. I had run the brand and creative department at Caldwell Craft Furniture for 11 years. The company made real furniture, built to last. We were based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. In late November, the building smelled like sawdust. Cold air came under every door. Every morning I came in early. I set my bag down. I picked up a small watering can and watered the dead succulent on my windowsill. It had been dead for 2 years. I watered it anyway. That Tuesday morning, Preston Holt called me into his corner office just after 9. He was Gerald's son. He had been running the company for 3 years. He sat in the leather chair his father used to sit in. He told me the creative department was being restructured. My role would not exist after next month. He delivered it carefully, but his satisfaction was right there under the surface. Then came the second part. Brooke was starting tomorrow. I was expected to train her fully before I left. I said I understood. I thanked him for the notice. I walked back to my desk. I picked up the watering can. I watered the dead succulent, and I almost smiled. What Preston did not know was simple. 3 months before that conversation, I had become the majority owner of Caldwell Craft Furniture. I had done it quietly, through a holding company I built over several years called RC Holdings. Every transaction stayed just under the public disclosure threshold. My lawyer Marcus had overseen every filing. RC Holdings now held 51% of the company. What nobody in that building knew was this. The woman Preston just fired already controlled the board. To understand why I got here, you need to understand Gerald Holt. I joined Caldwell Craft 12 years ago as a junior designer. Gerald hired me. He was a craftsman. He cared about quality. He cared about people. 6 years and he promoted me to head of brand and creative. When he did it, he said something I never forgot. He said a good piece of furniture outlasts the person who built it. He meant it about more than wood. 3 years ago, Gerald had a sudden heart attack. He was gone within days. Preston stepped in within weeks. The change was not slow. It was immediate. I remember one afternoon in particular. We had a call scheduled with one of our biggest retail partners. $42 million in annual contracts. Preston walked past the conference room at 11 a.m. He poked his head in and said he had a golf commitment. He told me to reschedule it. I rescheduled it. The client did not take the second call. We lost that contract 6 weeks later. Nobody said anything in the next team meeting. They had all learned by then what happened when you said something. My jaw stayed tight the entire drive home that evening. That was the moment I stopped waiting. I started buying shares the following Monday. Small amounts. Personal account. Nothing visible. More shareholders sold as each bad quarter landed. I formed RC Holdings. I acquired larger blocks. I stayed patient. I stayed quiet. Then 3 months ago, a major institutional investor decided to exit entirely. It was a large block, enough to shift everything. I called Marcus that evening. I told him it was time. People always say just cut them off and move on. But what do you do when cutting them off means watching them destroy what you built? What would you have done? I am genuinely asking. Marcus spent 6 weeks on the acquisition. Every document correct. Every signature in place. Board members who had served under Gerald were notified through proper legal channels. I went to work every single day. I sat at my desk. I watered the dead succulent. I answered Preston's emails on time. My closest friend at the company was Donna. She was the office manager. She was one of 3 people who knew about RC Holdings. One afternoon, she stopped by my desk and asked quietly if Preston had any idea. I told her no. I said he was too busy celebrating the Brooke hire. Donna raised her eyebrows. She said Brooke's former employer had been losing accounts for 18 months. She mentioned financial irregularity concerns attached to that company as well. I nodded. Donna nodded. She walked away without either of us saying the obvious thing out loud. That night I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time. Engine off. It was cold. I stared at the steering wheel. I had spent years on this. Years of careful, quiet work. And for one cold moment I let myself think maybe I had it wrong. Maybe Preston would find a legal gap. Maybe the board would protect him. Maybe I had miscalculated somewhere. I sat with that thought for a while. I did not resolve it. I just drove home. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning Brooke arrived in a sharp blazer. Confident. Prepared. Within an hour she had told me my brand strategy was outdated. She said customer loyalty programs were a waste of resources. She said aggressive acquisition was the only model worth running. I wrote everything down. I said very little. The session did not end with a clever comeback. It ended with me quietly closing my notebook. At 10 a.m. my phone buzzed. Marcus. One line. Papers filed. Board notified. Meeting at 11. I looked across the table at Brooke. I told her we needed to stop for the morning. There was an emergency board meeting. She looked confused. She said Preston had not mentioned any meeting. I told her I did not suppose he had. The conference room had tall windows. The November light was flat and gray. Preston was already there when I walked in. He was on his phone. His face went very still when he saw me. He told me this meeting was for executives only. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. I sat down. I told him I knew that. Board members walked in one by one. Several had served under Gerald. A few of them glanced at me and gave a small nod. They had already seen the documents. Marcus arrived last. He set a thick folder on the table and distributed copies to each board member without a word. Preston's voice came out louder than he intended. He said he had not authorized this meeting. He demanded to know what was happening. I stood up. I told the room that RC Holdings had acquired controlling interest in Caldwell Craft Furniture. I told them the acquisition was complete and fully documented with the SEC as of that morning. The room went very quiet. Preston stared at me. His face moved through several things quickly. He said it was impossible. He said I was just a brand director. He said I could not afford a company this size. I looked at him for a moment before I answered. I said his father taught me how to build things that last. I told him I had been quietly building this block of shares for 3 years. Every share fully paid for. Every filing clean. Then I looked at his hands on the table. I told him to take his hands off his father's company. The room did not make a sound. A board member named Patricia called for a vote on new leadership. Her voice was steady. She had been on the board since Gerald's time. The vote took 11 minutes. Preston was removed as CEO of Caldwell Craft Furniture. He stood up fast. His chair hit the wall. Security arrived within minutes. He was still talking about lawyers as they walked him down the hall. His voice echoed and then it was gone. But it was not over. Preston did not crawl away quietly. Within 4 days, his family's lawyers had filed an emergency motion to freeze company accounts pending a review of the acquisition. For 6 days, I could not make payroll decisions. I could not sign vendor contracts. I sat at my desk and answered questions from employees who were starting to look nervous. The local business press ran a story that week. It was anonymous. It suggested Caldwell Craft was in financial chaos under new leadership. It said the board had been manipulated. I knew where that story came from. Marcus spent those 6 days in depositions and filings. On the 7th day, the judge dismissed the motion. Every document was clean. Every transaction was legal. The freeze was lifted by noon. I walked back to my desk that afternoon. I picked up the watering can. I watered the dead succulent. My hands were steady. A few days after the legal matter closed, I called Brooke into my office. I told her I had spent time reviewing documents from her former employer. I told her the financial audit files raised serious concerns. I said she had 2 choices. She could resign that afternoon. or I could forward the files to the appropriate regulators. She resigned before I finished the sentence. Donna and I spent the following weeks going through 11 years of personnel files. We found craftspeople and designers who had been quietly pushed aside. We brought them back. We gave them real roles. The mentorship program Gerald had built was reinstated. The apprenticeship track Preston had canceled was reopened. Within 6 months, the company had steadied. Within a year, profits were up 45%. Employee satisfaction scores hit the highest level in the company's history. One evening, I was at my desk after everyone had gone home. An email came in from Helen. She was Gerald's widow. She wrote that Gerald had always told her I understood what Caldwell Craft was truly for. She thanked me for keeping it alive. I sat with that email for a long time. Preston thought he was closing a door on me. He was not. He was stepping out of the way of something that was already in motion. I looked at the dead succulent on the windowsill. I picked up the watering can and filled it. Some things you just keep doing. Not because you expect anything back. Because it is who you are. Tell me something. If this had been you, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have given him one more chance? Drop it in the comments. And if you know someone who needs to hear the story right now, send it to them. They will know why. If this story gave you that feeling, that specific satisfaction of watching the truth finally land, subscribe. Because I have more. Stories about people who were written off and counted out, who then made sure that was the last mistake anyone made. See you in the next one.